Shalom, brothers and sisters. You guys can come back in. I don't know what be happening. I swear I don't. Now the doggone thing is not even loading up, right? If you have trouble loading up the video, the previous one I did, um, um, forgive me for the inconvenience. I don't know what's happening, but we're gonna do a little recap real quick. So before we go into before we continue this. So basically, brothers and sisters, the overall lesson is called "Blow Up the Trumpet for the War for My People," right? And basically, what we're getting into is the children of Israel are the people of God, and when the children of Israel are in their holiness, brothers and sisters, then that means that if you offend them and if you devour them, then evil is going to come upon you because the Lord is going to fight for his people, right? That's why we want to acknowledge when the trumpet is blown, even with our own lives. It is a warning before the destruction happens, right? For all that's coming in, we're just doing a recap right quick. So we read Jeremiah 4. I'm gonna give all the scriptures so people can write them down. We gave Jeremiah 4:19 to 22, and this is starting off with him explaining with Israel the destruction that was going to come upon his people, right? And that how long was he going to set up the standard and hear the sound of the trumpet? Because eventually, brothers and sisters, you should understand when the warning is there, it's time to take heed. Don't be foolish and be wise to do evil, but to do good you have no knowledge, right? Because that's what he said about Israel. He said they were a foolish people, right? And if they would just acknowledge what's going on, then he could save them from his enemies. When you blow the trumpet up unto God, you're calling out to God to save you from your enemies. But how can you do that if you're in your disobedience, right? Because he's not even going to hear your prayer at that point, right? We went to Numbers, the 10th chapter, to explain there is 3 reasons why you blow the trumpet, brothers and sisters. That's for the gathering of the assembly. That's for the camp, taking journeys and migrating where they got to go. And also for war, which is what we are focusing on today, right? So the second scripture is Numbers, the 10th chapter, 1 through 2, and verse 9, right? Third one is Deuteronomy, the 20th chapter, verses 1 through 4. This is dealing with the engagement or rules of war. The Lord letting the people know that when you go into war, not to be afraid, because I am with thee. And symbolically, brothers and sisters, that can be the war or trials and tribulations that you're dealing with on your everyday life. And you got to understand that if you're walking with God, that he is with you no matter what you're going through, brothers and sisters, right? We had Exodus 15, 3 through 9, showing an example of when God did that for Israel when he dealt with Pharaoh and his army, drowning them in the Red Sea, brothers and sisters, right? He said he is a man of war. So why would you want to deal with a being that is this powerful, brothers and sisters, right? And not be on his good side. He is a man of war, the most strategic being in the universe, brothers and sisters. And why would you want to go to war with someone like that, right? We read Deuteronomy, the 32nd chapter, 39 through 43, which is showing that he said, I kill, I make alive, I wound, I heal, and that there's nothing or nobody that can deliver his enemies out of his hands. So why not listen to him, brothers and sisters, right? We went to Revelations 12, 1 through 9, and verse 12, to show that the origin of this whole war and friction coming down through the nations, brothers and sisters, was when Michael and his angels fought against Satan and his angels. Now Satan is down here with us, and he's wreaking havoc on the world down here with us. And once again, the warning was, or the trumpet being blown, was showing us that the devil is down here and that he is coming with great wrath for his enemies, right? So the devil, if you're walking in righteousness, brothers and sisters, and you're walking to serve the Lord God of Israel, you are the enemy of the devil. Always remember that, right? So the devil, what was he doing? He wants to take the place of God in his throne, right? But when you go to Isaiah 40, the 42nd chapter, that's 8 through 14, right? He said he's not going to share his glory with another, right? Or with any idol. So you might as well not even have that mentality, brothers and sisters. You submit to him, he don't submit to you, right? Of course, Jeremiah, we went to Jeremiah 2 and 3. Once again, this is just a recap, brothers and sisters, because I don't know what happened as far as the other video playing. So we're going to do a recap. You go back through this, and you can see these scriptures and understand the concept or the meaning behind the scriptures, right? Jeremiah 2 and 3, he said, Israel was holiness unto the Lord, the first fruits of his increase, and all, I repeated that, all that devour him shall offend the Lord, and an evil shall come upon him. That's the type of God that you have, brothers and sisters, right? That is the type of God that you had. Now, we are in Jeremiah, the 51st chapter, and this is 19 through 23. And he said that the portion of Jacob is not like theirs, talking about the heathen, right? The portion of Jacob is not like theirs. Why? Because we have the Lord God of Israel as our God, and we're set apart people because of him, brothers and sisters, right? Then he said they are the former of all things, and we know since we are the image of our God, brothers and sisters, he is the creator and form of all things, so he's going to use us as a form of all, as forming all things, brothers and sisters, right? And you will see that if you go into the history of Israel, you can see that all these little inventions that we take for granted, right, that we use on our everyday living was created by an Israelite. One case in point, the internet, right? But then he said that Israel are his battle axe and weapons of war. And he will break in pieces the nations using the nation of Israel, brothers and sisters. I had made a disclaimer that I don't care what you're reading, brothers and sisters, there's a time and place for everything, just like it says in Ecclesiastes, the 3rd chapter. There's a time and a place for everything. There's a time for peace and there's a time for war. This ain't a time for war, so nobody take it upon themselves just because we're reading these scriptures to go to war without the God of Israel directing your steps and showing you that this is time, which it ain't going to be, brothers and sisters, till the end of the Great Tribulation. So we might as well not even try to pull that, right? Now we're going to Joel, the 2nd chapter. Joel, the 2nd chapter. Joel, the 2nd chapter, and we are going to start at verse 2. Joel, the 2nd chapter, and we are going to start at verse 2. Getting beside myself. Okay. Joel 2 and verse 1. I'm sorry. Joel, the 2nd chapter, and we're going to start at verse 1. Joel, the 2nd chapter, and we are going to start at verse 1. And verse 1 reads, Blow ye the trumpet in Zion, and sound an alarm in my holy mountain, right? Once again, the trumpet is the warning before destruction happens, right? Let us continue. Let all the inhabitants of the land tremble, for the day of the Lord cometh, for it is nigh at hand. And we know that the day of the Lord is the destruction upon the earth, brothers and sisters. So blow that trumpet in Zion. Sound the alarm. War is coming. Destruction is coming. The Lord's wrath is coming upon his enemies, right? Excuse me. Verse 2. A day of darkness and of gloominess, a day of clouds and a thick darkness. As the morning spread upon the mountains, a great people and a strong, there have not been ever the like, neither shall be any more after it, even to the years of many generations. So, brothers and sisters, the day of the Lord is darkness and gloomy, right? And we don't want to be at that point in our disobedience, brothers and sisters, right? That's something that we don't want to do. We want to be obedient when the day of the Lord comes, because it's dark, gloomy, and he's going to pour out his wrath upon his enemies to the fullness at that point. We don't want to be in that situation, brothers and sisters. We really don't. Let us go to Amos, Now let's go to Amos, the 5th chapter. Amos, the 5th chapter. Amos, the 5th chapter, and we are going to start at verse 8. Amos, the 5th chapter, and we're going to start at verse 18. This is people dealing with the fact that sometimes people always say that I wish the day of the Lord would come. I wish Jesus would come back right now and this, that, and the third. Well, he had a warning for those people, right? And we shouldn't want this. I can wait, brothers and sisters. Because once again, he said in Joel that day is darkness and gloomy. That's why the alarm had to be blown, because it's going to be massive destruction at that point, right? So this is what he warned people when they get to the point where they're wishing for the day of the Lord to come upon them, right? Verse 18, Amos 5 and verse 18. Amos 5 and verse 18. And it says, woe unto you that desire the day of the Lord. To what end is it for you? The day of the Lord is darkness and not light, brothers and sisters, like we read in Joel. The day of the Lord is darkness and not light, right? So don't desire the day of the Lord. You can wait, right? Just do what you have to do and warn as many people as you can, especially the children of Israel, right? Because if they don't grab hold to this thing, their fate is worse than everybody else. It's just like we get the first of everything positive, we get the first of everything negative, right? Let us continue. Verse 19, as if a man did flee from a lion and a bear met him, or went into the house and leaned his hand on the wall and a serpent bit him. Shall not the day of the Lord be darkness and not light, even very dark and no brightness in it? So you think you're gonna get away with this, brothers and sisters, and you're really not, right? You're really not. He said the day of the Lord is darkness, right? It is like, the day of the Lord is like a man fleeing from a lion, and then fleeing from a lion, brothers and sisters, he think he got away, and then he run into a bear, and a bear met him. Or that he goes into the house, right, think he's safe and secure, and he put his hand on his arm on the wall, and a snake bite him, right? You can't get out of this. The day of the Lord gonna come, and the wrath of God gonna come upon the entire earth, and you are not gonna be able to stand when his wrath comes upon you if you are his enemy, right? Or if he decides to wipe out everybody, because the righteous get hit sometimes too, brothers and sisters, right? But for a different reason. But he will wipe out the whole earth when his wrath comes if he wanted to, right? And he's going to wipe out a large portion of the earth, brothers and sisters, right? So we want to be on his good side. That is the point of all this. Let us go to Joel, the 3rd chapter. Going back to Joel. Joel, the 3rd chapter, and we're going to start this at verse 9. Joel, the 3rd chapter, and we're going to start this at verse 9. Now, once again, brothers and sisters, we read in Revelation, the 12th chapter, where the people that making war against the Lord are from the seven, or he was talking about the 7 heads and the 10 horns, which is the Gentile dynasty, right? So in Joel, the 3rd chapter, this is getting into the Armageddon. This is getting to the last battle, which is Armageddon. And let's see who he is talking to in this. Joel, the 3rd chapter, and we're going to start at verse 9. Joel, the 3rd chapter, and we are going to start at verse 9. 3 and verse 9. Joel 3 and verse 9. And verse 9 reads, proclaim ye among the Gentiles, brothers and sisters, right? That's the 7 heads and 10 horns, brothers and sisters. They're going to be ruling in the last days through the great tribulation and in the second coming of Christ, right? Which is what this is going to be about, right? So proclaim ye this among the Gentiles, Prepare war, he tells them, right? He blowing the trumpet again. Prepare war, wake up the mighty men, let all the men of war draw near. Let them come up, beat your plowshares into swords and your pruning hooks into spears. Let the weak say, I am strong. So if you think you tough, he telling you to come with it, right? Proclaim ye among the Gentiles to prepare war, because he coming with the war. Blow that trumpet, that alarm, because war is coming. And this is what he proclaimed to the Gentiles, right? Verse 11. Assemble yourselves and come, all ye heathen, right? So what's another reason to blow the trumpet, brothers and sisters? Assembly is happening, right? So he's telling them to assemble for war, right? So you got 2 and 1. He said, assemble yourselves and come, all ye heathen, and gather yourselves together round about, thither cause thy mighty ones to come down, O Lord. Let the heathen be wakened. Let the heathen be wakened and come up to the valley of Jehoshaphat, for I will sit to judge all the heathen round about. So the valley of the Jehoshaphat, or the valley where Jehovah will judge, brothers and sisters, which will also be called the valley of decisions, right? Where he will decide who will be on his good side versus his bad side, right? He gonna take out his enemies and proclaim war to his enemies, right? This is the day of the Lord when he brings them to the valley of Jehoshaphat, right? And he prepares war amongst them, brothers and sisters, specifically talking to the Gentiles, because the Gentiles will be ruling in the last days, right? So this is him proclaiming war to the Gentiles. So all who want a war, he telling you to come on up, come on with it, because he is a man of war, brothers and sisters, right? He is a man of war. Let us be on his good side. Let us go to Zechariah, the 14th chapter. Zechariah, the 14th chapter. Zechariah, the 14th chapter, and we're going to start at verse 1. Zechariah, the 14th chapter, and we're going to start at verse 1. Zechariah 14 and verse 1. 14 and 1. And verse 1 reads, Behold, the day of the Lord cometh, and thy spoil shall be divided in the midst of thee. For I will gather all nations against Jerusalem to battle, and the city shall be taken, and the houses rifled, and the women ravished. And half of the city shall go forth into captivity, and the residue of the people shall not be cut off from the city. Dealing with Israel, right? So this is what's going to happen to Israel at first, brothers and sisters, but then what did he say was going to happen after? Verse 3. Then shall the Lord go forth and fight against those nations as when he fought in the day of battle. So he's going to return what happened to the children of Israel on the head of their enemies, brothers and sisters, right? This is what's going to happen in the day of the Lord, brothers and sisters. He is going to have vengeance upon his enemies and the enemies of the remnant of his people, brothers and sisters, right? He will save his people from their enemies. And this is based on the blowing of the sound. This is the alarm, the blowing of the sound of the trumpet. So, get yourselves in line, brothers and sisters. Get your houses in order if you don't want to get hit with the wrath of God anytime in your life, but especially on the day of the Lord, right? You don't want to get hit with that. Let us continue. We're going to Zechariah, the 10th chapter now. Zechariah, the 10th chapter. Zechariah, the 10th chapter, and we're going to start at verse 3. Zechariah, the 10th chapter, and we are going to start at verse 3. Zechariah 10 and verse 3. And verse 3 reads, My anger was kindled against the shepherds, and I punished the goats. For the Lord of hosts hath visited his flock, the house of Judah, and hath made them as his goodly horse in battle. Out of him came forth the corner, out of him the nail, out of him the battle bow, out of him every oppressor together. Once again, brothers and sisters, this is going back to when he said he was going to use Jacob and use Israel as his battle axe and weapons of war. And right here, he's setting up Judah to do that, right? Verse 5, and they shall be as mighty men which tread down their enemies in the mire of the streets in the battle. And they shall fight, because the Lord is with them, and the riders on horses shall be confounded, right? So didn't we say that in Deuteronomy, the 20th chapter, that when they go and engage in war, right, of course, by the permission and the blessings of the Most High God of Israel, he is with them. That is symbolic with anything that you are fighting a war with, brothers and sisters. Like I said, especially if you are a child of God, a child of Israel, right? So he said that he was going to use Judah right here as his mighty man, which tread down their enemies in the mire of the streets in battle, and they shall fight because the Lord is with them, right? So, and they're going to know that the Lord is with them. They're going to know it's the time at that time, brothers and sisters, which is when the day of the Lord comes, brothers and sisters, right? That is when this is going to all go down, right? Let us continue. Let's go to Jeremiah, the 30th chapter, and we got two more scriptures after that. Jeremiah, the 30th chapter, and we're going to start at verse 10. Jeremiah, the 30th chapter, and we're going to start at verse 10. Jeremiah 30 and verse 10. Uh, 30 and 10. Verse 10 reads, therefore fear thou not, O my servant Jacob, saith the Lord. Neither be dismayed, O Israel, for lo, I will save thee from afar, and thy seed from the land of their captivity. And Jacob shall return and shall be in rest, and be quiet, and none shall make him afraid, right? So this is going to happen. This is the purpose of why God's stirring up all this wrath on his enemies, primarily because his enemies are against the children of his people, brothers and sisters, right? Let us continue. Verse 11, for I am with thee, saith the Lord, to save thee, though I make a full end of the nations whither I have scattered thee, yet will I not make a full end of thee, but I will correct thee in measure, and will not leave thee altogether unpunished, right? Once again, that is because he had to keep the covenant that he made with Abraham, so he could not make a full end of Israel. But that's also because the love he has for Israel as his set apart people. He's just waiting on us to hear that trumpet, acknowledge the warning, and get back on business, brothers and sisters, right? Let us stop being comfortable in our disobedience to God, right? That is what this is about, right? Verse 12, for thus saith the Lord, thy bruise is incurable, and thy wound is grievous, right? So it's incurable because the whole nation is not going to be back where it was with the people that are here. It's going to take the remnant that's going to build a new nation, brothers and sisters, and spread their seed with that remnant, the 1/3, right? They're going to create more and more children that will eventually build up the nation of Israel. But the people that we have now, it's incurable, brothers and sisters. It's too grievous, right? So he's gonna have to get rid of most. He's gonna have to get rid of most of us to start over. That's why he is going to save the remnant of his people from their enemies, because the remnant of his people are doing what he says to do, right? Let us keep going. Let's go to Isaiah, the 2nd chapter. Isaiah, the 2nd chapter. Isaiah, the 2nd chapter, and we're going to start at verse 4. Isaiah, the 2nd chapter, and we are going to start at verse 4. Isaiah 2 and verse 4. And verse 4 reads, "And he shall judge among the nations, and shall rebuke many people. And they shall beat their swords into plowshares, and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither shall they learn war anymore." So once he's done with the people, once he's done with his wrath coming upon the people, they ain't gonna learn war anymore. They're gonna give up having war, brothers and sisters, because it's gonna be so grievous and the wrath is gonna be so destructive. They're not gonna want to deal with the Lord God of Israel in that way. He gonna show that he a man of war. So man, we ain't even gonna learn war anymore. We're not even gonna worry about that, right? This is what it is boiling or coming down to, brothers and sisters, right? And this is the overall thing of what God was trying to make the children of Israel show the rest of the world. Verse 5, "O house of Jacob, come ye, and let us walk in the light of the Lord." So the light of the Lord through the children of Israel was supposed to be seen amongst the nations, which is the laws, statutes, commandments of the Most High God of Israel, brothers and sisters, right? And when you are getting rid of all the enemies, when you're cleaning the world, all the wickedness, they're not going to want to learn war anymore, right? So there's going to be no reason to blow the trumpet when it comes to war. No warnings will have to be put out there, because why? Because people are now on board and keeping the law of the Lord, right? Let us go to the last place. Let's go to Jeremiah, the 33rd chapter. And this is for those people, for some reason, don't think that saving the nation of Israel, saving the children of Israel, is important to God. And people feel like he just completely cast them away. But as we read in Jeremiah, the 30th chapter, he said he was not going to make a full end of us, brothers and sisters, right? Because he had to keep the covenant that he made with Abraham. So let us read Jeremiah, the 33rd chapter. This is the last place. Jeremiah, the 33rd chapter. And we're going to start at verse 24. Or 23, I'm sorry. Jeremiah, the 33rd chapter. And we're going to start at verse 23. Jeremiah 33 and verse 23. Let's see what he says to all those people who want to count Israel off and say that the Lord didn't cast them away and this, that, and the third. This is one of the reasons why he got to save Israel from their enemies, brothers and sisters, because their enemies going above and beyond to try to cast his people away, and try to make it to where don't nobody remember us, don't nobody even want to think about us, nobody cares that we're still here and who we are. Nobody cares. But you have to care in order to really see what's going on in this book. Right? Verse 23. Jeremiah 33 and verse 23. And verse 23 reads, "Moreover, the word of the Lord came to Jeremiah, saying, Consider thou not what this people have spoken, saying, The two families which the Lord hath chosen," talking about Judah and Israel, "he hath even cast them off." This is the question, right? "Thus they have despised my people, that they should be no more a nation before them." That's why he got to save you from your enemies, brothers and sisters, right? Verse 25. "Thus saith the Lord, if my covenant be not with day and night, and if I have not appointed the ordinances of heaven and earth, then will I cast away the seed of Jacob and David my servant, so that I will not take any of his seed to be rulers over the seed of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. For I will cause their captivity to return and have mercy on them," brothers and sisters. So don't ever let anybody tell you that the Lord just cast his people away and that he ain't worried about saving you from your enemies, right? And once again, this is why we keep feast of the blowing of the memorial of the trumpets, to acknowledge, brothers and sisters, that that warning is coming out for us to get ourselves in line and for the rest of the nations to get themselves in line and stop going to war with God's people, because God's wrath is going to come in the day of the Lord, brothers and sisters, right? Once again, I'm sorry for the inconvenience, family. We're having these difficulties. These things will be resolved in soon, very soon. But I do hope you were edified today. And once again, I represent the Walls of Jericho Biblical and Historical Studies, Hebrews in the Hood Entertainment. Tune in next Monday. This is, like I said, this is for travel purposes. This is not the usual day that we come on, right? It will be Mondays at 7, and we will resume that next week. So, once again, I hope everyone is edified. Thank you for tuning in, brothers and sisters. And I hope that you have a nice day, rest of the day, and shalom, brothers and sisters.